Welcome to Relationship Talk, the podcast where we have real conversations about love, well-being, dating, and relationships. In today's episode, I had a gorgeous conversation with Katie Phillips, who is a trauma-informed healing guide, author, and transformation coach dedicated to helping women step into their fullest, most authentic selves. With a unique blend of spiritual wisdom, intuitive energy work, and mindset coaching, she empowers others to embrace the fullness of their human experience, navigating life's dualities, contradictions, and challenges with grace and self-compassion. You can find out more about Katie's powerful work in the show notes. During this conversation, Katie shares the telltale signs of a codependent relationship and the steps to overcome it. She talks about some of the common internal and external blockages that might prevent you from becoming your fullest self, alongside sharing practices to help facilitate deep, lasting change to achieve your relationship desires, such as how using your feminine energy can inspire a man. And also, not sure where to start on your path of self-empowerment and self-awareness? Don't worry, Katie's got you covered. And so much more. You are about to get the whole RLT, aka Relationship Talk, so you're going to want to watch the entire episode. I deeply believe that you will find this conversation as nourishing as I did. And remember to subscribe, hit that like button and that notification bell. I'm Teresha Young, your international wellness and relationship coach. Enjoy, take notes, and get ready to apply all key messages you take away today. Hello, Katie. Welcome so much to the show. How are you doing today?
Hi, darling. I am very well. I'm pleased to report. Thank you. Yeah, all good. All
All
good.
good. And I'm so glad to hear this, Katie. I have been following your work, which feels like for years. I feel like a dinosaur when I think about how many years I have been following your work. At one point, I was even part of your membership group. So I actually do feel like you are such an important feature of my life and of my development, my self-love journey. So firstly, I want to thank you for the impact and influence that you have had on my journey. Thank you.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. Thank you for saying that. I'm not sure I like being referred to as a dinosaur. I mean, you didn't refer to me as a dinosaur, but I'm like, I know I was just telling you I just turned 50, but does that make me a dinosaur? But yeah, no, I know your name, your presence has been in my world for a long time now, hasn't it?
It has been
And
such a long time. And you know what? For the younger lot listening to this podcast, they probably would refer to us as a dinosaur in terms of how old we are, but I'm not going to accept that. So, Katie, I would love for you to share with the listeners just what led you to becoming a trauma-informed healing guide and transformation coach.
Goodness me. Do you know, whenever I am asked that question, I kind of pinch myself that that's where my life has brought me. Because it wasn't kind of the life plan. Not that I ever particularly had a life plan per se. I was always one of those kids at school that didn't really know what she wanted to do. And I kind of floated into hospitality and travel and tourism and then into events management. And because I was always good with people,
Mm.
and I liked creating experiences for people too. So that always featured. And it really was the direction my personal intimate relationships went
Mm.
that then informed my career choice to become a transformation coach and therapeutic coach, because it was my inability to have a healthy, connected relationship that, you know, I mean, look, let's go back to when my son was 2 years old and I split up with his father 3 months before our wedding was planned. So that obviously didn't go down very well. There was a lot of drama around that. Um, but it was in that experience where I realized that I genuinely I didn't have a deep sense of self. Like I felt like I didn't know myself. let alone love myself. And that's what I've gone on to work very deeply with women around, is that self-love piece. I'd have laughed at myself back then that I was ever going to talk about self-love. I just was
Mm,
super cynical about that whole world, of that whole body of work. Um, Except that I didn't love myself. And it was becoming more and more apparent that I didn't. And it was becoming more apparent that I didn't have any kind of emotional mastery, because
mm,
I was living in a very reactive state and in relationship, which is kind of what relationships are designed for. They will press your buttons
yes.
and show you where healing and growth is required. I
Yeah.
didn't know that then. I didn't know that when someone pushed my buttons, I was being shown an aspect or a part of myself that was looking for healing and love. I just thought I was a victim. I thought it's not fair. And I played the blame game and pointed
Mm,
fingers. And I was attracted to relationships that were full of drama, that were full of codependency, where addiction featured. And neither of us were emotionally masterful. We were trying our best and doing our best. And we're both inherently good, loving people. But in reflection of relationship, neither of us knew how to be our best selves. Actually, what happened is our worst selves were coming out. And this
mm,
was a pattern in my life. And when I found myself with a 2-year old, 3 months off getting married and realizing I couldn't move forward, that realization came hand in hand with the knowledge that I needed to do some work, that I was the common denominator, and enough with the blaming. And it was time for Katie to really know herself and understand why she felt so distrustful in relationship,
yes.
why she felt sometimes very needy in relationship, and sometimes had the guards up and was pushing away. I was
Mm,
either desperately pulling in or desperately pushing away, but I didn't know how to just be me and just relax in who I was and allow myself to be loved and allow myself to love. I didn't know. And I came to understand that a lot of that was conditioning and programming based on what I witnessed in my parents' marriage. And I came to understand that you can heal and you can change your belief systems. You
mm,
can master your emotions. You can have a very loving, intimate relationship with yourself.
mm,
And until you do, you don't get to have a loving, intimate relationship with somebody else, because your stuff is always going to be mirrored. And if you're just going to be reacting to it and not responding in that kind of transformational growth way, I don't know, you're kind of doomed, right?
mm,
so,
yeah.
so, so that was, I went on my own journey. I did a lot of healing, which ranged from counseling and therapy through to transformational coaching, through to, you might have heard of the Hoffman process. That was key in my journey. And I suddenly realized, what was the point of life if I couldn't pass on this information? I had such profound growth, such profound change, and I loved already working with people and creating wonderful experiences for them. So I just moved into the wellness and healing space. Here
Mm.
I am 15 years later, still doing it.
Katie, wow. I think your journey is so relatable to people listening in terms of what you've shared there. And you said that you just wasn't being you. So you've allowed yourself to just be me. So what does just being me look like for you now?
I was actually, funnily enough, I was reflecting on that this morning when I was walking my dog.
Mm,
I start every day walking, hiking in the woods with my dog, and it's very grounding, and it's where I really reconnect back into myself.
mm,
And I was reflecting on my relationship with James. We've been married for 6 years now and together for 8 years,
mm,
which is a miracle story in its own right, having been a single mama for 8 years, and at the work I did to call him in. But I was reflecting on our relationship and actually how in the last year it's really deepened. And I'm so glad. Like, it
yes.
was great. And there's just a depth to it where I feel like, from the moment I met him, I knew I was being authentically myself. And I
Mm,
know, hand on heart, that's always been the case. And there's something about, I mean, we moved country. So we moved from the UK. I'm living in the States now. We moved here just over a year ago. And I actually think the journey of moving country, I mean, talk about some challenges and bringing stuff up. There, you know, a
Yeah.
lot of uncertainty and a lot of new to discover. And we've just kind of ridden the waves of all of that change and uncertainty as a real team. And you know, there's been anxiety and there's been worry and there's been all sorts of different things have come up, but we've worked through it all together. And I really was feeling so grateful this morning that
Mm.
I can be even more the truth of who I am with him, like just warts and all. You know, like we went to bed last night and I said, darling, can I just talk to you for a sec? I'm feeling really anxious. I'm making some big changes in my business life and
Mm.
I'm feeling a little ungrounded and a little unsettled about it. And we just talked about what I was anxious about. And I don't know, it's like I don't have to pretend with him. I can
Mm.
just say how I feel. And I think the beauty of it is, though, that I have learned how to feel my feelings and move through my feelings on my own before going to him as well. So he's not my journal, like he's not my therapist. I don't go to him panicking, like, fix me.
Yeah.
Um, I have my own counsel first, and then I can go to him and share where I'm at with so much honesty and openness. And it just still amazes me that I can have such a relationship, actually, because that wasn't my path. That's not what I experienced historically. A
Yeah.
testament to the inner work, right?
It is. And I can
Mm.
tell that you've done the inner work because even the way that you are able to express yourself in such a vulnerable way, I'm feeling anxious. You've told him how you're feeling, you've poured into your
Yeah,
emotions.
yeah,
And I think that really helps to foster a good, solid relationship where we can feel that we have a space to feel safe, to be able to express ourselves. So that's a testimony to you and then also to James as well, to be able to hold that space for
yeah,
you and just allow you to be.
yeah. He is actually excellent at that. And no one taught him that, by the way. That's just his innate skill is to hold space.
Mm.
And it's funny, you know, he doesn't know what anxiety is. When I talk to him about anxiety, he's one of these rare humans that's like, what's anxiety? Like explain how that feels. And I think he does
Ooh,
experience it sometimes, but he doesn't have the language for it.
yes.
Equally, I just don't think it just he doesn't go there emotionally. That's just not something that's normal for him, which I think is pretty remarkable, actually.
Yeah. And that's that level of acceptance, isn't it? Because what I like there is his level of curiosity. And I do feel that curiosity is so key when it comes to relationships. This is why relationships can go stale. It's because we
Yeah.
lose that sense of curiosity. We don't see somebody through a fresh lens of love or
Mm.
curiosity and to grow with each other. And it sounds like over the last year or so that you, because of your journey to the States as well, there's been a growth period, a little bit of like stretch, expansion
Mm. Mm.
out of your side of your comfort zone. You're making changes to your business as well. So there's been so much growth, intense growth, maybe. If I use that word, maybe intense growth.
You know what? I can tell you're a coach because you've just shone a light on something for me that I actually hadn't acknowledged. That yeah, we moved country and I'm making significant shifts in my business. And you know, my home and my business are two focal points of my certainty and security in life. And
Mm.
both have just gone whoop, throw it all up in the air, you know. So yeah, I'm glad that I'm able to share that with him and that we're a real team in that
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
And as you said, it has been a journey, and you did mention the word codependency as well, being codependent. So,
Mhm.
for those who may not be familiar with that term, can you walk us through what codependency is and some of the telltale signs that you may be in a codependent relationship?
Yeah.
Sometimes people don't even realize it until they go, aha, that sounds like me, or that sounds like my situation.
It's a really good point. Actually, I remember the first time hearing the term codependent, and it was from my mom, and she'd been to her therapist, and she'd come home, and maybe I overheard her talking to a friend, maybe she told me directly, But she said, I've realized I'm codependent. And the word scared the hell out of me. It sounded
Mm,
very technical and scary. I was probably about 17 years old. My parents had just gone through a divorce,
okay.
and my mom was really depressed, not in a good way. And she'd actually attempted suicide at that point, and then she successfully took her own life when I was
Mm,
22. So she'd been, and I'm going to use the word damaged, maybe there's better words,
mm,
but she was really damaged by codependency in her relationships. Um, and it was many, many, many years later that I discovered what codependency meant, and that actually I too was codependent.
yeah.
And in a nutshell, it means that if I'm in a relationship, I need him to be okay so that I'm okay. And
Mm,
I will bend myself into a pretzel to make sure he's okay so that I can feel okay. Because if he's anxious or insecure or maybe not paying me any attention and I make that mean something about me, but if
yeah.
there's something going on in his behavior that has me not feel okay, I will do whatever it takes to have him be okay, which can sometimes be the term would be oh, here we go. Here's the midlife brain fog.
Mm,
Enabling. I might be
okay.
enabling some really dysfunctional behavior in him to try and placate and make him okay, just because I'm so desperately in need of being okay. Because I don't have that deep sense of self. I don't have that core foundational self-worth, self-trust, self-value, let alone self-confidence. Like I get all of that from him. So if he's okay, then I can be okay. Um, yeah. And you can heal it. I mean, codependency is a pattern of behavior. It's a learned habit of behavior. And we
Mm,
can unlearn those habits and create new healthy habits. And it's a real process of awareness creation in the first instance, sort of understanding why your programming and conditioning is like that. What was modeled to you? How do you behave in relationship? What's your attachment style?
yeah.
Like I shared before, I was either like desperately clinging
Yeah.
on with neediness because I so needed him to be okay. But of course, I'm not talking about James here. This is pre. um, or I was building walls in front of me to keep him out,
Mm,
depending. And it really, when it comes to healing codependency, we want to understand how we're relating to people, and essentially where we're feeling like we need to get our basic human needs met outside of ourselves, met from
mm,
somebody else. So in relationship, those basic human needs would be, it's the Maslow hierarchy of needs. So it's the feeling, the certainty, the variety, the
mm,
love, the connection, the significance, like the way we receive those key human needs, which we all must have. We have to have them to feel like we're surviving, but there's positive and negative ways of getting them. And
yes.
when we're codependent, we're kind of trying to get those basic human needs met largely from the person that we're with. We need them to tell us we're okay. We need them to make us feel safe rather than have that deep sense of safety in ourselves. We need them to give us the love and connection that we need rather than being able to source that internally. And, we can do that in a relationship. We do it with our careers. I could use my career to give me significance and
Yes.
certainty. There's not anything inherently wrong with that unless I can't do that for myself. If I can only source it externally, we've got a problem because life happens and things end.
Yes.
I'm going through it now with my business. There's aspects of my business that I'm closing down.
Yeah.
And there's a part of my identity that's like, oof, that's gosh, I really noticed where I was getting my significance and love and connection and certainty from.
Yeah.
And I have to remember, how do I source that internally? And when we can develop that deep relationship with ourselves, it means when we go into relationship with somebody else, I can be me
Yeah.
and he or she can be them.
Mm.
and we can operate separately and we can come together in a healthy way. I can respond to what's going on in the relationship rather than be reactive to it, because
Yeah.
the reactivity suggests that I'm actually still reacting to past life events. I'm not dealing with what's happening in the here
Mm.
and now,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I mean, there's a lot that plays into codependency, but that's kind of in a nutshell what we're
Mm.
dealing with.
I love the layers that you went into there because some people may say, but isn't that a good thing for me to want to make sure that everybody's okay? That my partner's okay. But what you
Yeah.
have described it is that, but it's when you are completely like reliant on that person to fulfill that needs. And if that person wasn't there, is how would that need be fulfilled?
Yeah, well, I guess what I didn't very specifically say is when you're doing it to your own detriment,
Mm.
right? Because I mean, the good girl archetype, she has a really big, beautiful heart and she just wants to take care of everybody. And there is nothing wrong with that. Like, what a beautiful thing to
Yeah.
have the capacity to love and care for other people, to give and to nurture others. That's beautiful.
Mm.
As soon as it's to your own detriment, you got a problem and you have to take a look at the codependency that is probably present.
Yeah.
And codependency is just a word, like, it's just a word. It's a habit of behavior, and it's so important to remember habits can be changed.
Yes.
That's the really crucial message here. Habits can be changed,
Hmm.
and your habits aren't who you are. It's just a behavior. Who you are is a beautiful, wise, spiritual, like a soul.
Mm.
You're worthy and you're meant to be here, and you do this work too. We're both in this body of work where our job is to remind our clients that that is the truth of who they are, not their thoughts, not their sabotaging behavioral habits, not all the stuff that's challenging them in their lives. It's coming home to ourselves,
Yeah.
and in that place we can then relate healthily to people, and we can also communicate. There's times with James where my stuff, historical stuff around not trusting men, will
Mm.
occasionally come up. I
Mm.
have 8 years of proof in this man that he is dependable, reliable, honest.
Yes.
And still, sometimes my triggers will show me that I still don't fully trust the masculine.
Yes.
And because of the deep work I have done, I'm able to go to him and say, "Oh, I'm really triggered right now," or I'm freaking out
Yeah.
about XYZ. And I know it's ridiculous, but you need to know that I got some work to do here,
Yeah.
right? So it's not a one and done healing. I think there's certain pieces that we've carried through from childhood that we might need to revisit again and again.
Mm.
And self-love just invites us to continually love that part of us that's wounded, and that was told that perhaps we're not enough in some way or not lovable in some way, and we just keep loving that part of us and do our best, because the human experience is pretty challenging, right?
Yeah, it is. It is challenging, and it also creates space for exploration. And I'm sure at one point when I was part of a program that you were doing, is that rather than use the word homework, you use exploration. I think as a terminology, in terms of what it is, because it is all about exploration.
Yeah.
And you're speaking about breaking habits. It's a thought
Mm.
pattern, it's a belief system that can be changed. It can be reframed. So, what are some of the best first steps I would say somebody could take to break the habit? Because often, no, when we break a habit or we stop something, there's a void, and the universe abhors a void.
Yeah.
So, how do we replace that old habit with a new empowering ones?
Oh, goodness me. I mean, it's a journey, isn't it? It's, in fact, the very first online course I ever created was called Love Yourself Free from People Pleasing.
Oh,
It was the first one I created because it had been my deep journey. It was like
yeah.
the first body of work that felt most important to put out into the world. And it was, gosh, at least 10 years ago that came out, that body of work, which is still available. People still buying it and using it.
Amazing.
What would be the first steps? The first steps would be, well, I mean, in any transformational journey, the first step is awareness, right? It's awareness creation. And just having that very honest, like just that honest moment with yourself of exploring what's true here. I mean, I have drama in my relationships, or I'm unable to trust in my relationships, or
Mm.
I'm run ragged because I'm always running around after everybody else. I don't know how to take care of myself, or there's not time for me. Really noticing when our victim archetype comes up, and really what is that actually about? But it's noticing what your triggers are, noticing where you feel really uncomfortable in relationship, and your behavioral habits that try and cover that
Mm.
up. Like just being really real with yourself, because honesty, that self-awareness is the first step to change. And
Mm.
there's nothing to change if you don't know what we're changing.
Yeah.
And having that honest moment with yourself from a very compassionate, loving place,
Yes.
right? Not the judgment.
Yeah.
Probably most people, I would say most people have some level of codependency going on until they realize it. There's levels and layers to it. There's grades to it.
Mm.
There's a whole spectrum. So, I was fairly deeply codependent. And how that manifested for me was a lot of anxiety, constantly
Mm.
worrying, constantly placating. Um, and my internal compass was off completely. I mean, I can't even begin to explain how anxious I was. I used to be, I'd have to sit on the floor to try and catch my breath. I was so anxious with worry about what my man was doing or not doing.
Mm.
Where was he? Yeah. So the honesty around that, like, that's not okay. There's just not okay to feel like that, and recognizing that it's so easy to normalize it. Like
Yeah.
me, I did normalize it until I just stopped and checked in
Yeah.
with myself and was like, do I really want to feel like this all the time? Is this really okay? No, it's not okay.
Mm.
And of course, with all of that awareness, it can feel very overwhelming
Yeah.
and terrifying. And we're like, what the hell do I do with this information? So my invitation at that point, it's actually a prayer. And the
Mm.
prayer is, even though I don't know what to do next, I'm willing to be shown. It's
Beautiful.
like, right? Because it's just
Beautiful.
that I don't know,
Mm.
but I'm just right there in that prayer, in that one sentence where we're really opening up the energy. We're not closed tight in our little box on our own, us against the world. We're
Mm.
saying, even though I don't know how, dot, 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 I'm willing to be shown. And the doors get opened. And I believe it's the divine floods in and shows us the way. And the way forward is going to be different for everybody, right? So it could be a book. I think one of the first books I ever read was Codependent No More by Melody Beattie,
Okay.
which was a big influence in the course that I went on to create, as was the Hoffman process, as was many other resources. But it could be a therapist, it could be a meditation, it could be words in a book. But, bit by bit by bit, the divine will swoop in and kind of lay out your own individual path, because there's so many teachers and professionals out there that can help. There's so much resource now. Like when my mum was diagnosed codependent, she was like, it was like, good luck with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There wasn't a lot available, right?
Mm.
And now we have so much that in itself can be overwhelming. So it's like, trust that the way for you to heal will be revealed,
Yes.
and what you're ready for every step of the journey will be shown to you. Your only job is to say yes to the guidance when it comes in, and commit to doing the work, because inner work, that transformational work, is it is a commitment, and
Mm,
self-love invites you to take personal responsibility and do whatever it's going to take for you to heal.
yes.
That, if we want a really beautiful, healthy relationship, it's worth it, right?
Oh, absolutely worth it. And when you were talking there, the word just surrender came to me. It's
Mm,
like just surrender. Because when you say I'm willing to be shown, it's just you're surrendering to the process. You're surrendering to the process, the possibilities. I think that's so beautiful. And also, like, what else could be true? And when we start to really, and I think that might be something that you actually said in the past in terms of trying to explore ourselves, is just what else could be true in this situation? Because when we start to witness that awareness that you've spoken about, we are going to have these thoughts that come, and it's okay with no judgment to explore the thoughts, as you said, and to create that vulnerable space for ourselves. And I do think that there's a lot of power in journaling so that we can actually really witness. So you've spoken about anxiety, and that's the emotion, it's the feeling that came up for you. So
mm,
when we can tap into, how we're feeling, then we can find out what's the thought that is causing those feelings.
yeah.
That's a beautiful way to witness that
Mhm.
process.
Yeah.
And when you spoke about bodies of work as well, because we are talking about self-love here and whatever people might want to call it, because some people are like self-love, self-care, well-being, whatever sits well for you. I have to say that,
Oh, you've got the book. You can't buy that anymore. I took it
oh,
off Amazon.
can I send it to the
Yeah.
States? Can you autograph it for me?
Oh, it would be my joy to autograph it for you.
Oh,
I've almost finished creating the 10-year anniversary edition of that at the moment.
yes.
So there'll be a second edition available very, very soon, which actually, it will include, well, lots of different additional tools and resources. There's a huge new body of work within the book on the inner child, which we haven't even touched on here because it's a whole other conversation. But when it
Yes.
comes to healing codependency, working with your inner child is key to the key, because that's where the conditioning and the programming
Mhm.
originated, was when we were very young, usually.
Yeah, I cannot wait to get that book. So for those who have not seen, because you're listening on audio, I just held up Katie's book called The Self-Love Affair that I bought so many years ago. As Katie said, it's not available anymore. So this is proof that I have been on the journey. Hey,
That's
doing
so
it.
cool. You can
I
get secondhand copies of it, I think, on Amazon. I think, people resell books, don't
Oh,
they?
of course, of course. I've got my book. It's full of my notes. I'm not going to bring them too close because I've got all of my notes because I did
Oh,
use it as a learning tool. It was a beautiful body of work and it had such a profound impact on me. One of the key insights I took away was how essential it is to approach self-love as a continuous, intentional journey. Is not just a destination, it is an absolute journey. And it really helped me to understand more about self love, that it actually requires active choices,
mhm.
commitment to
Yeah.
embracing all aspects of ourselves as well. So I'm just looking at this book and just thinking, all aspects being the challenging ones. And I remember one time, I do sound like such a complete fangirl, but I do also remember a post that you did maybe a few years ago where you said that self love is self responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would love for you to maybe explain a little bit more. I know we have been speaking about creating that awareness, but what does that actually mean?
I mean, self-love, it's such a word that people throw around now. And I love that they throw it around, because when I first wrote that book, that
Yeah.
was 10 years ago, but I started this work, it was 15 years ago. No one was really talking about self-love. And I remember I did a TEDx talk at Google in London just as that book came out, actually. And I remember I started the talk with making a joke about self-love, because when I ever said that in front of men, they thought I was talking about masturbation, right?
Of course,
Self-love,
self-love. Oh
of
yeah.
course.
Of course.
And I was like, back in the day, I used to have to explain what I meant by self-love. And slowly that language became a little more popular, but it was still kind of linked to self-care and having a nice bath and maybe an early night and eating good food and just general gentleness with yourself, which is part of self-love. And I personally take a stand for self-love being, yeah, it's a responsibility piece. It's
Yeah.
self-love is inviting you to master your emotional self, master your intellectual, mental self, develop a deep relationship with your spiritual self, your soul, your heart, and of course, take care of your physical self, your body. So self-love is inviting you to work with all these four parts of yourself.
Mm.
And when it comes to, well, when it comes to having a relationship with your spiritual self, practices are required. It is a practice because every single day we're invited to overcome our humanness and our ego, come home to ourselves, remember who we are, and give ourselves permission to enjoy practices that put us in that space. So for me, it's walking in the woods with a dog, it's yoga, it's meditation, it's journaling.
Mm.
But those practices connect me to my soul and my authentic self. And then when it comes to anything that feels self-sabotaging or not really truly who we are, not comfortable in our own skin around our emotional state or our mental state, it takes work. It's like you said, what else could be true in terms of the sabotaging, self-harming thoughts we have?
Yeah.
By the way, that was said by Byron Katie. So there's a body of work called The Work. And
Okay.
yes, I use that term borrowed from her all the time. What else could be true? Because it's just freaking genius.
Yeah.
And we have to, like we have to check in. I'm thinking this makes me feel pretty rubbish. What else could be true? Choose a
Mm.
thought that makes me feel better.
Yeah.
But it's work to bring ourselves back to a peaceful, calm, emotional state, an empowered state. It takes work to change up thoughts and belief systems that we've had since day dot and have them be more self-loving and empowering. Like that takes work. It takes persistence. It takes determination.
Yeah.
And I feel really fierce about what self-love is,
Yeah.
and no one can do that for you. I actually had a client recently and she was brilliant. She was pushing back at me. She was in resistance,
Yeah.
and I asked her a question and she said, well, but Katie, that's what I'm paying you the big bucks to answer. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Right there. No, it is no one else's job to give you your answers or
Absolutely.
help you to feel less anxious or
Yeah.
more in charge of yourself. That's no one else can do that for you. You do that for you and you receive support along the way. And so, yeah, self-love is self-responsibility.
Mm. Can totally see that. So the journey between the first edition of your book, so 10-year anniversary, I believe it
Mm.
is. What would you say? How has your understanding of self-love evolved since that first
Do
edition
you
to
know,
now?
that's a really awesome question. It's so in the first book, there was a very you can look for yourself. There's a
Yeah.
short chapter on the inner child. But then you'll see, I can't remember how many pages it is. That chapter might
Oh,
be 3, 4 pages on the inner child.
okay.
Teeny, teeny, tiny chapter. And then I've worked with, I don't know how many thousands of women since that book was written. And I came to see again and again and again and again that it's all about the inner child when it comes to
Okay.
self-love. Like when it comes to self-love, we have to know how to reparent that wounded part of ourselves.
Okay.
And so I rewrote the chapter on the inner child. And actually, for a long time, I was wondering if it actually really needed to be a separate book because it is
That
pretty
deep.
chunky. Yeah,
Mm.
it's chunky. And in the end, I no, I'm no, I'm just putting it all in the same book. So yeah, that's the biggest shift is while every aspect of that book which is a workbook, isn't it? As you
It
said, it's
is.
a
Yeah, I've got notes here to prove.
yeah, like it's a workbook. There's meditations, there's
Yeah.
music playlists. I've updated the music playlist, which was
Oh,
so
I
fun
still
to
got
do.
that on my Spotify. I'm going to say that.
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, you'll notice now, even though I've not released the new book, the playlist is a little more modern and up to date, which is very cool. Um, yeah, and what's beautiful about being able to do a 10-year anniversary edition is including client stories all the way through it. I mean, I'm still wondering if I should edit them down. I have so many, but it is really beautiful to read different women's experiences of different pieces of the work that are in
Mm,
that book, because it makes you as the reader feel like I'm not the only one, I'm not alone in this, I'm not crazy, because look, she said that, and she was able to heal too. So yeah, that's all in
yeah.
there now.
So that's really exciting because, of course, I'm going to get the updated edition, of course, because I've still got this one. So I cannot wait to explore more about the inner child because it sounds like a whole separate piece that people don't usually think. They think about an inner child. What I haven't even. Oh, you've got to be childish, Katie. But yeah, it sounds like it's going to be so much exploration to do there. And I know that in your work as well, because you've spoken about your bodies of work, is that you do refer to the heroine's journey. So
Yeah.
what does that look like?
Well, that's just, I mean, you've heard of the heroines, the hero's journey. Sorry,
I
we
have,
we
yeah.
know we know the hero's journey. So, I've got to add the feminine to that. It's
Yeah.
the this is I think all of the transformational work I'm doing and you're doing as well. When we're working with women, it is a heroine's journey, and it is her it's the adventures that you take to come home to yourself, and the battles you go through and the challenges that you face and what you have to overcome and the realizations that you have. That is the heroine's journey. I mean, I think the courage and determination and persistence that it takes to move through all the different layers and stages of the journey does require you to step into your heroine archetype.
Yes.
And yeah, and it's why, with the byline on that book, so it's a self-love affair, and then the byline is a woman's guide to a daring and mighty life.
Yes.
And I think, I have heard recently, now I'm in the States, meeting new people, got a new audience, the words daring and mighty, I've heard, are a little intimidating,
Mm,
which is interesting to me. But to me, daring and mighty is, yeah, choosing to step in onto your heroine's journey, like into that journey. And I think it does require us to be daring, and it
yes.
does require us to be mighty. Like, no matter what, I am going to do whatever it takes to feel more me, to
Yes.
feel generally more aligned, more empowered to create the life I want to create. Like,
Mm.
that requires a daring and mighty spirit. And I'm all about that. That's how I want people to approach transformation. It's
Yeah. I hear that, and it's the tone, maybe it's the sound of those words, daring and mighty. It can feel
mm,
maybe a little bit intense or intimidating. Just how you say the words daring, mighty,
yeah,
that might be one of the reasons why it feels a little bit intense or is a bit intimidating. But then also, I think it's the word associations because I think for me, when I hear the word daring and mighty, it does feel quite masculine. Those words, isn't it? It kind of
yeah,
feels like but in an empowered masculine way. So I do
yeah.
think it's important, and I know you have spoken much about this, and you really were quite informative when it came to me understanding more about feminine energy and
Mm.
also masculine energy. And for those people, if you could just touch briefly, Katie, I would love it if you could just explain a little bit more about masculine and feminine energy, because I know at the start of this conversation we did we did kind of reference masculine.
Oh my goodness, my love. That's
I
like
don't know. I don't know if you
whole
can.
Yes, we can. Of course we can. It's a whole other podcast. And let's see. How can we put this into a nutshell? Because it's such beautiful work.
It is
Uh,
amazing work.
oh my goodness. So essentially, every human, no matter your gender, no matter how you identify, you have masculine energy and you have feminine energy. This is my belief. Take it or leave it, right? And it's our masculine energy that makes things happen. it's the doing. Yeah, so it's very active. It's the
Mm.
doing. And then the and by the way, the doing energy, it's very intellectual. So you're very much up, your energy is kind of up in your head. And then the feminine energy is more the receiving.
Mm.
So you've got the giving, the doing energy of the masculine. Now, feminine energy is more the receiving, the surrendered, the resting state energy.
Mm.
And that's the part of us that is, if you're going to locate it in the body, it would be more kind of heart and it would be more body. So
Yes.
masculine energy is kind of shoulders up and feminine energy is shoulders down. And most of us spend most of our time, because it's our societal conditioning,
Yeah.
we are made to believe that we are not enough if we're not proving our worth and doing and achieving and accomplishing in a demonstrable, obvious way. Like, here's my bank balance. Look, tick. I cleaned the house. It's tidy. Look, tick. This is my business. Look how wonderful it is. Tick. It's like this sort of demonstrable thing that you can show. I am worthy. I'm
Mm.
significant. And then it's our feminine energy that tends to take the back seat because there's not time
Yeah.
for resting and being. I got to do,
That's it. It's so overrated.
it's so overrated. And we feel guilty for it because we
Yeah.
should, in inverted commas, be achieving. And so we deny this part of ourselves, this energy within us, the feminine, that's as crucial, I would actually say more important than our masculine energy. Because when we don't know how to surrender into our feminine and allow ourselves to be in that place, we cannot connect with that part of us, which is our emotional self. We can't connect with our spiritual self
Yeah.
because we're head up, we're
Yeah.
outward focused. We need to be inward focused and head down, connecting to our heart, into our bodies, into our soul, to hear the whispers of our soul. And from that place, I believe the feminine actually inspires the masculine. When you've got a really beautiful, healthy dynamic going, when we're in our feminine energy, we feel our next move. We know our purpose. We
Mm.
know we know what we're here for. We get our divine guidance, our exciting ideas. And yeah, then the masculine has to go and make that happen. You
Mm.
don't make it happen on your meditation cushion, right?
Yeah.
That's when the masculine can actually take action, but it's inspired action.
Yeah.
So then we feel aligned, then we feel in flow.
Yes.
And when it comes to being in a human relationship, as a woman, for me to be able to have a healthy relationship with my man, I need to be able to put myself in my feminine energy because that's a receptive state and I can receive him. I can enjoy him, right? When I'm in my masculine, like sometimes if he's feeling a bit lovey and, wants a cuddle and so
Yeah.
on, if I'm like just come off a Zoom call or I'm running this to-do list in my head and I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm doing all the things, high achieving. And if I'm in that state, I'm like, dude, don't even come anywhere near me. You got to let me, I need to switch gears. I
Yes.
probably need to go for a walk. I need to get my feet in the earth. I need to breathe for a bit. I need to get myself into my feminine where I can be receptive and then I can receive you,
Yeah.
but yeah, a lot of, and this has been my journey too, a lot of women struggle to be in that state, to be able to receive their partner. And then there's the dynamic of we're both in our masculine and wonder why there's no intimate emotional connection,
Yeah.
because that requires both of us, man and woman, both partners, no matter gender, to be in their feminine to be able to connect. So
Yes.
it's a huge body of work. It's a much, much, much bigger conversation, but in a
Oh, it
nutshell.
is. Yeah. And that's so great the way that you have described it. As you said, it is a huge body of work, especially when you talk about the man being in their feminine energy. That's a whole nother conversation, I think.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I mean, they have to, just as we have to learn how to tap into their feminine,
Yeah.
right? But bless them, society on a whole other level for them is telling them, well, you ain't a man unless you're productive and performing and
Oh yeah.
producing for your family. And I mean, you know, it's a whole cultural relearning is required for all of
Yeah.
us, all genders.
It
Mm.
is. And I love the way how you tap into your feminine by going on the walk, being in nature, allowing yourself to be
Yeah.
present. And some people might be thinking, so how do I tap more into my feminine energy? Well, just as Katie has said, go on a walk in nature, allow yourself to receive. Katie's
Mm.
spoken about journaling as well, which is a great way to just allow yourself to
Mm.
receive what's coming towards you. I know
Mm.
also that you do retreats and breath work, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's so powerful as well because I'm sure I've heard you say as well that the body is the home of the feminine energy. So it
Yes, it
is
is.
it is the home of the feminine energy. So how can you find ways to connect yourself more deeply with your body? And as Katie said, it's a big piece of work, but well worth doing it because it can
Mhm.
be a game changer when it comes to building and strengthening our relationships with other people as well. So insightful. So insightful.
Yeah, yeah, whether you're single or in a relationship, really learning how to move into that empowered relationship with your own masculine and feminine energy is going to be a game changer.
Yeah. Katie, you have spoken about your relationship with James as well.
Mhm.
I cannot believe you've been married for so many years. I remember when you made the announcement, and I'm beginning to think, where's time going? Oh my goodness. Wow.
I know.
Amazing. What has been some of your key learnings in your relationship with James, would you say?
Oh, goodness me. Well, James has been my practice ground for being in my feminine. Before
Mm,
James, I never had a relationship where I knew how to be connected with that part of myself.
yeah.
Obviously, I mean, I was single parenting for 8 years. In that time, and I was predominantly single, but in that time, I dated a little here and there. And in probably the year before I met James, that's when I would have been doing most of my dating. And I was definitely practicing being
Mhm.
in my feminine on those dates, like just
Yeah.
learning to sit back, surrender, receive. Um, yeah, not take charge or control.
Which I can't understand, especially being a single parent, is that it does often put us into our masculine energy because we're doing it all, isn't it?
Mothering is so masculine. This
Yeah.
is such a yeah, it's you need your masculine energy to be a mama because
Yeah.
you've got stuff to make happen, sort out, be organized, right? It's a
Yeah,
lot.
it is. I know. Trying
Yeah,
to do it all, it can be a lot.
it's a lot. So yeah, practice with James being just innately who he is, as we were saying earlier, he's just that empowered man. He just can hold space for me. So and that is what the masculine energy does. The, our own inner masculine energy, and in my relationship his masculine, like him being the masculine, holds space
Mm,
for my feminine to just move and flow as she needs to with her ups and her downs and her, there's a fluidity to the
cool.
feminine, whereas the masculine is that solid
Mm,
structure that
yeah.
holds the space for her. So yeah, I've been learning with my, my historic distrust of the
Yeah.
masculine. I've been learning to trust.
Mm,
I've been learning that it's okay to surrender and relax in the presence of the masculine.
yeah.
Um, I've been learning to be so vulnerable. Um, and I've been learning that I can be vulnerable and surrendered and be a high achieving woman that's got it going on, like I can,
Yeah.
like there's something about the feminine, just I think it can be misinterpreted as like surrender is somehow weak,
Mm,
except surrender is it's action, it's an activity, it's something we are doing. Like resting is a doing word,
mm,
being is a doing word. It it doesn't looks like we're not doing anything, so it's not as demonstrable as the masculine energy, but actually a lot is happening when we are being. there's a lot of creativity happening, you know. So I've
Mm,
really been learning to trust that more and more inside of my relationship. And I have seen the truth that the feminine inspires the masculine. So not only within ourselves, as you know, your feminine energy inspires your
mm,
own masculine energy
yeah,
into inspired action, but in a relationship, I see how me as predominantly feminine inspires him. And he would be the first to say the reason why we're in the States was my vision. You know,
yeah,
it's through his work that we ultimately ended up here,
yeah,
but it was my vision and it was my decision that that's what we as a family needed. And he is the one that made it happen. So it's just really seeing that evidenced in our relationship has been really fun. I feel like I'm always learning with him. It's
yeah.
great. Mm.
That's so beautiful because I'm just feeding into that experience, and I can just say the fact that you use the word inspiration, because again, inspiring him, also learning the growth, that space of vulnerability so that you can be yourself, just be me. That's going to stick with me in terms of what you said. He is allowing you to just be yourself, and that's so beautiful, so beautiful, given the journey that you've had and the growth work that you've done. So absolutely amazing. Katie, I do like to ask my guests on my show what their personal definition of love is on a romantic front. What does love mean to you?
Oh my gosh. Okay. What does love mean on a romantic
On a
front?
romantic front, yeah.
Goodness. Oh, I don't even, how do I put that into words? Because
Yeah,
it's a feeling, isn't it? I don't even
yeah.
know if I can verbalize. It's, I, if I, if I dig into how I feel when I feel
Mm,
the word love, it's deep trust, deep honesty, deep vulnerability. You know, love for me, it's not candlelit dinners and it's quality time. I feel like I'm like feeding into my love languages now. It's like
mm,
feeling real quality time together. And yeah, yeah,
yeah.
that's what
I'm
love
really
means.
feeling it as you're describing it there, because I just can feel how that's coming from the heart. I can feel that energy coming through because
Yeah.
it's just sometimes it's hard to verbalize it because it's big. It can be so big. The expansiveness of love, and it being that love is our essence, is huge. So I do throw that question out there because I'm super curious as to how people define it. And I just think that your definition is so personal to you, but then also so relatable to so many people.
I also feel with love, like for me, I feel like it's him and I against the world. You know, like I really, our love is, it's like partners in crime. And, you know, we're really in it together. And I think love is very bonding and uniting like that.
Yeah, bonding and uniting. I love
Mm.
that. Not codependent. Let's just get that straight.
No.
It's not.
Not codependent. It's different. I'm not
It's
like
different.
chained to him because I'm like so needy. No.
It's the bond with handcuffs.
Yeah.
Codependent.
Yeah.
Oh, so beautiful, Katie. Oh, this is going to bring our conversation to a beautiful close. I do have a parting tradition on the show whereby I would love for you to leave our listeners with one key takeaway to help them along their journey of love, well-being, dating, and relationships.
I think that the most powerful first step you can take to heal, to feel more aligned, to be able to actually hand on heart say, I love myself, is to wake up every single morning. Every morning, this is a practice. It
Yeah.
takes a couple of minutes. Wake up before you open your eyes, just put a hand on your heart.
Mm,
Maybe if you're a woman, put a hand on your womb as well.
mm.
And say to yourself, how do I feel and what do I need?
How do I feel? What do I need? Ooh,
How do I feel? What do I need? Because right there, if you're in a habit of people pleasing, I mean, I'm saying that because it really ticks the boxes on so much of what we talked about.
yeah.
So if you're in a habit of people pleasing, It's practicing putting yourself first before you get out of bed. How do I feel? And what do I need? Not how do they feel and what do they need? And let me
Yeah.
make them okay so I can be okay.
Yeah.
But how do I feel and what do I need? And also in that same moment, I know we haven't talked about the inner child particularly,
Mm.
but you're also, the inner child is your emotional self. And in that moment, you're relating to that part of yourself. How do I
Mm.
feel and what do I need? And it's the self-care piece as well. How do I feel? What do I need? And you can, if you want to take it a step further, you could check in with all parts, your
Mm.
intellect, your mind, your emotions, your spiritual self, and your physical self. And you could ask each part of yourself, how do I feel? What do I need? Like, do I need to be a little kinder with my thoughts today?
Mm.
Do I need to have a good cry today?
Yeah.
Do I need to go to yoga so I can feel a little more connected to my soul today? Do I need an early night tonight? Like
Mm.
just that
Yeah.
is a real game changer in terms of knowing and loving yourself.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. Yeah, I'm just feeling into that. What do I need? How do I feel? It's so powerful. It's so, so powerful. And for everyone listening, you deserve that. You are worthy of that time in the morning. Do not turn on your phone, go straight to social media, to your emails, whatever's going to put you into a state of anxiety or cause you at kind of connect deeply with yourself. Two powerful questions to ask, Katie. So beautiful.
Mm.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for today. If people would like to connect with you, follow your work, have you got any events? How can they do that? How can they reach out to you?
I think the first stop would be the website daringandmighty.com, which links through to the school. So I've got the School of Self-Love, but that has its own site, the School of Self.love.
Mm,
And my Instagram is Katie Phillips with love.
beautiful. And I'm going to drop all of Katie's handles in the show notes so you can connect with Katie there. And I just want to thank you again, Katie. It's been such a beautiful conversation. I've really felt into the experience. I feel very inspired now. And
Oh,
I so can't wait for your next edition of your book to come out. Woohoo! So
thank you.
thank you so much. And for everybody who has listened today, I want to thank you for your time, for your attention, and for your energy. And until the next episode, take great care of yourself and others too.